I am often asked, is self-publishing worth it, Dale? Should I be spending all my time and resources on something like this whole business? Yeah, this is a difficult answer. In fact, I'm going to have to be very transparent with you when I share why I thought about quitting many times, not just once, many times. We're going to talk about that in today's episode, so make sure that you stay tuned. This is Self-Publishing with Dale, and if you'd like to learn how to publish books that sell and build an unstoppable author brand, make sure that you subscribe and turn that bell notification on so that way you don't miss a single video. Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Findaway Voices. This is the audiobook distribution platform reaching over 30 different audiobook retailers throughout the world. This includes places like Audible, Google, Apple, and so much more. And recently, they actually announced something called the Voices Share program. For those of you that are a little bit cash strapped, maybe on a tight budget, consider this latest feature of Voices Share, because here's why. You can produce your audiobook for half the price in exchange for sharing 20% of your royalties with the narrator. Now, that's pretty cool. And when starting a new project here, you'll see the Voices Share option in application form. Now, you can use Voices Share. You don't have to use Voices Share if you're able to kind of come to it, because I know I've used the platform before and I didn't necessarily need that. In any event, review narrators, see cost estimates, and get auditions for your project at no extra cost. Sign up today at findawayvoices.com/Dale. Alrighty, so here we are in another podcast episode. It's kind of crazy to think we're on episode number 20. We've been going 20 weeks straight with this. I know this is nuts. So I want to say a big thank you out there to those of you that are either watching or listening to the content that I have. It means the world to me. And it mean even more if you were to go to Apple Podcasts, find my podcast, and leave a review if you would. It would make my day. We're going to talk about, is self-publishing worth it, and why I thought about quitting. So here's the problem, folks. The problem comes down to, we've all been there. We've all been there. Everybody that's a newbie to the person that's an experienced person. And if you're an experienced person going, oh no, I've never felt like quitting, you're fooling yourself. Let's be honest. There comes a breaking point for every person out there, and I am not superhuman. It's rather easy for people to kind of watch me on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or even see my tweets and such, or on LinkedIn, and they think, oh man, this guy is superhuman. Folks, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. And there are times to where I just feel like crying. In fact, I'm sure I probably have shed a few tears before. I'm not afraid to say that. This is true. This is not, I'm going to say this right now, this business is not for somebody that doesn't have thick skin, that isn't ready to put in the work. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that were triggers for me. Because if you can identify these triggers, you can nip them in the bud before they become a problem. Because if you are truly passionate about getting into the business of self-publishing, then you shouldn't let some of these small things get in the way. So let's go ahead and we're going to start it out with problem number 1. Information overload. Oh my, I've seen many aspiring self-publisher and author out there that didn't last more than a few months. And why? Because they became overwhelmed by all of the information they find online. Where do we start? What comes next? How do I do this? And to make matters worse, you get the contradicting information. And so you've got this self-publishing with Dale guy telling you to do it one way, but then you hear self-publishing formula with Mark Dawson and he tells you to do it another way. And then maybe you watch some old videos from this would-be self-publishing guru or expert telling you should do it this way. I know it can be super, super overwhelming. And one thing I'm going to tell those of you that are new to this business, take a deep breath, relax. I think one of the things that you need to focus on, first of all, is write the content. Get the content done, and then consider your next steps if you're a newbie. Now, if you're experienced in the business, information overload starting to take over, then chances are, very likely, you're probably going to need to get yourself around like-minded peers such as yourself that are goal-oriented, success-driven. Because when you start to feel like you have too much information, you're starting to become overwhelmed by it, then you can always bounce these ideas off of each other. I know when I came into the business, I actually came into it kind of backwards. It was really weird in that I had wrote the material and then I started going to different print shops because it was my belief back in 2013 that I had to acquire like pallets of books, that I had to pay like thousands up front and have a big pallet of books, and I'd handle it on my own because I wasn't concerned about traditional publishing deals. I was just realistic about it. Yeah, so I discovered that it was going to cost a lot of money, and it was money I didn't have. So that's why I started looking into other avenues, and I saw CreateSpace. And then as soon as I saw CreateSpace, this opened up a whole world of information. And so I started looking up YouTube videos. I started reading online blog articles, web posts, things like that. And I started to really become hamstrung. I became stuck because there was just so much stinking information. And had I quit then, because I was thinking about it, because I couldn't afford it, and then I started to see, oh my gosh, I just want my book published. That's all. I don't want to know what metadata is. I don't want to know about keywords to put inside my title. I don't want to spend money on a cover designer. Oh, it was too much for me to bear. So I literally was at a point where early on in the process, it was hard enough writing the content. Then for me to publish it became a whole ordeal. So this is my recommendation for you on information overload. Study current information. That means you start to consume things that are happening now, 2019. I know this sounds kind of crazy. You're probably like, Dale, you've got a bunch of videos from 2016. Should I stop watching those? Hey, I love you watching those type of things. But sometimes the information, some of it is evergreen, but some of the other stuff, so like you might see a CreateSpace video. CreateSpace is gone. It's no longer applicable. So I would say if you start to consume any information, make sure it's current and up to date. Next thing is, sometimes don't worry about those fine details. Just take massive freaking action. I mean, do it now. Be a bull in a china shop and get it to where no one is going to stop you. And you'll see, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes even if you sit here and study till the cows come home. Nothing will ever be perfect. But if you just take massive freaking action, analyze your results, and adjust as you go, you're going to find information overload, gone. You won't need to worry about it. Next big mistake, wearing all hats. Ooh, man. This is tough. My type A personality just will not let me part ways. I think that even my assistant, Ava Fales, would agree with this, that it's tough for me to just let the reins go and say, okay, you go ahead and do this. Or I need to hire out a freelance designer for my cover. So there are often times that we want to do editing. We want to do formatting. We want to do the cover design. And of course, we're going to have to do the marketing and promotion. There comes a point when you have to know when to delegate or to hire out. And some of you that are on a fixed budget might go, but Dale, I don't have the money or expenses. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and point out somebody, Riley Morrison. He actually was a guest on the YouTube channel where I interviewed him in his first year of publishing. And one of the things that he'd shared was it took him about a year to come up with the funds to get a good professional editor. And what he did, instead of getting hung up on the details of like, okay, this is going to cost me a lot of money, he broke it up into bite-sized pieces. Every month, he had a small budget that he allocated towards a good professional editor. And when he had that money, he would send a portion of his book and they would fix it and it would come on back. And then the next month, they'd fix it, it'd come on back. I want you to start to think of that yourself as well. Think about areas in your life that if for some reason you are strapped for cash, How can you bootstrap those funds? What are ways that you can be resourceful with what you have? Because if you're a writer, write. If you are in the business of self-publishing and you're not a writer, then hire out those people for that. Get a good freelance writer that you can bring in for, say, a fiction or nonfiction brand that you're doing. Either way you shake it, make it, or bake it, don't try to do every single last thing. You will burn out. And I'm going to tell you this, as I have one finger pointed forward, I have three pointed back at me, because I'm guilty. And sometimes when I get really like uptight and I start to rage, and I got a short fuse, believe it or not here, folks. And I start to rage and I get upset, and I'm like, why am I mad? I'm not meeting deadlines. I set expectations really high and I didn't meet them. I didn't complete this project. Well, what could I have done to mitigate all those losses? I could have hired people out. And there comes a point too, and this is where I'm going to have to give a big shout out to my boy Keith Wheeler Books. Keith Wheeler is so smart and so resourceful with his network that he knows of people, and he's able to do a quid pro quo style system, or an exchange of something that is a value exchange, and that he looks for areas of opportunity that he can get what he needs to and also still provide value to that person. So you start to find yourself wearing all hats. Might I recommend focus on the things that you enjoy the most and delegate out the things that are eating up your time that you could otherwise get other professionals to handle. Next one. Oh my goodness. This one, I tell you, my popular videos over on YouTube usually involves lack of sales, no sales, needing more sales. People want more sales. And this is so true. Early on in my self-publishing career in 2014, 2015, I was really reliant on organic sales. I didn't do very much as far as marketing and promotion. And the stuff that I did was stupid. Like going into Facebook groups and spamming all of my books, like buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. Well, it was not shocking when I started getting kicked out of those. Like, no one likes that guy. I mean, honestly, and there probably are some groups out there that it's totally cool with. I get it, that's fine. But that's not going to help out. And if you're just relying on organic sales, in other words, you're just waiting for Amazon to get you your sales. You're just waiting on Apple to deliver your book. I've got a news flash for you. The reality is going to slap you in the face on this one. Organic sales are like a unicorn, okay? It's very mystical. It doesn't often happen to people. So don't put yourself into the shoes of, well, I'm just going to wait for them to bring it to me. You're going to have to make things happen. Let me share a little bit of a story when it comes to lack of sales and what it will make you do. A couple podcasts ago, I talked about some of the things that I wasn't so proud of. And I think some of you remember, this was December of 2015. It was at a breaking point. I saw all of my peers making 5 figures a month, while I couldn't even break $1,000 per month. I was ashamed, I was humiliated, and I know for sure I shed a few tears because it was so frustrating. I would see these interviews with these people that were like my first 30 days in the business and I was making $20,000 per month. And I'm going, what am I doing wrong? My books are beautiful. I've taken some time. I've crafted these things. I've had a professional editor come in. I've had these great covers. Why am I not getting at least 10 grand per month? Because these people have been doing it for 30 days and all of a sudden, I got to this point of desperation. And so much so that I started to subscribe even more to these crazy black hat tactics, to where you stuff your book full and you put a link at the beginning to send to them to the end for your ebooks. And then when you get it, it'll get all the page flips and it increase your rank and hooray, success. But as I shared in that previous podcast, that got me in huge trouble. And after I had my account suspended, that's when I realized that I lost sight of my vision, of where I was going, of who I was. Don't allow sales to be the thing that defines you as a self-publisher or a writer. Let me repeat that for emphasis. Do not let lack of sales or any sales whatsoever define who you are as a human being. That is not you. If you're a writer, write. If you're a publisher, publish. If you're worried about lack of sales, then you need to treat this like a business and start to understand you're missing something. And it's not trying to cheat the system. It's not trying to find that loophole. It's trying to find out, how can I do this better? What do I need to do to deliver more value to the world? Because when you deliver insane value to the world, I promise you, you will get rewarded in spades. It will be amazing. So the lack of sales, I'm telling you, it sucked. Now anytime that I see a drop in my sales, I just look at it as a business. I look at it as assets that work for me. Why are these assets not performing like they should? And when I can analyze this from a third-party perspective, like I'm giving advice to somebody, that's when I can go, oh, okay, well, we have this opportunity here, or have this opportunity there. So it's just something to think about here, folks. I've got one more little point before we start to move on here. I want to let everybody know that's listening to the podcast that every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern Daytime, that's Universal Time Coordinated -4, we have this podcasting recording over on YouTube and currently on Twitch. And you want to come join us every week. That's dalelinks.com/live on Saturdays and twitch.tv/self-publish. And I also want to make a big announcement that the podcast recordings will be moving from the Saturdays, because we're going to start to do Saturday lives on YouTube. And so we're going to move the Twitch podcast recording over on Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Daytime. That's going to start on Monday, September the 16th. So we're going to stick around here on YouTube and Twitch for right now as we record these podcast episodes. But after that, September 16th, it'll be on a Monday. So you actually will be seeing the podcasts 1 week before you hear it over on major podcasting platforms. So you get your leg in the door, your foot in the door, excuse me. And if you are following me over on twitch.tv/self-publish, please hit that little follow. If you're not, go to twitch.tv/self-publish, hit the follow. And more importantly, help support the show by subscribing to Self-Publish. That's twitch.tv/self-publish. And a subscription is one way to kind of help support the show, and as well, it's 100% free in most instances, because if you have Amazon Prime, all you got to do is head over to dalelinks.com/Twitch Prime. I show you how and why you'd want to do that, but it is really beneficial. I definitely appreciate the support. It's never expected, but always appreciated. All right, our last point here is the comparison game. It seems like it's a little bit of the same thing that we talked about in the previous point of lack of sales, because I started talking about that comparison. But this right here happens so often. And this is why every now and then you'll hear me saying competition, like look at your competition, or inside look in your niche and look at your competitors. But I try not to think about as anybody as competitors. I don't look at, say, Mark Dawson, who does information about self-publishing, as my competitor. I don't look at Chandler Bolt as somebody who is my competitor. These are people that are providing great, insane value to the world. So one of the things that helps me stay out of the comparison game is I look at them as working with me. I look at them as working alongside of me. So when you see those interviews or you see these income reports, I want you to think about it not as, well, I should be there, or I've only got $100 paycheck this month, and gosh, I just saw this guy in this interview and he makes $3,000 and he's only been doing it for the last week. Well, that's good for them. You are traveling your own path. You're doing your own thing. And by the way, if you happen to be hearing some techno music in the background, apparently my neighbor decided he wanted to be on the podcast. Big thumbs up. Make sure everybody goes over and sends him a little gift and a thank you card. So here's a little bit of a quote that I heard a long time ago. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. Write that down. Comparison is the enemy of contentment. If you continue to try to keep up with the Joneses, if you keep trying to be like this other person, you will lose yourself in the process. Because what if, we're just going to say, what if you end up making that $10,000 per month? What if you do make that money? Will that make you any happier? Because I'm going to tell you this from my standpoint and what the success that my wife and I have seen over the past 5 years and how it has incrementally grown. Either you're going to be happy at that point or you're going to be happy at the other point, but there's no in between. You got to be happy all the time. If you're unhappy, it's not a money problem, it's a mindset problem. You got to get beyond that. And one of the issues I see is that comparison starts to get into the way, and you start to get really frustrated because I should be doing this. They're doing it. Why can't I do it? You're traveling your own path. You're doing your own thing. Keep pushing forward. And as long as you are being more self-aware of your shortcomings, as long as you're figuring out, am I getting information overload? Am I wearing too many hats? The lack of sales starting to frustrate me. Am I trying to define myself by the actual sales I make? Then chances are likely you need to get yourself back onto the tracks and going in the right direction. So travel your own path. So as we start to kind of wrap things up, is self-publishing worth it? And all the times that I thought about quitting, which was many times, I never ever thought to myself, is self-publishing worth it? No. Of course self-publishing is worth it. But is this going to be something you're passionate about? I am. I know that this is where I'm going to hang my hat. I've met many content creators out there that are just in here for the cup of coffee and they're ready to bail. As soon as they kind of leverage that to get their own brand, and kudos to them. But I believe in my heart of hearts that self-publishing is 100% worth it. And if you think about the modern day self-publishing model and where we're at right now, it really didn't start. The whole modern day version didn't get going until about 2008. We're right now only in 2019. We're already about 11 years old. It's like a child. Over the next 5 years to 10 years, you're going to see self-publishing growing and becoming big. And if you're an early adopter, you will be handsomely rewarded if you just stick with it, learn the game, adjust, and never, ever, ever quit. So here's a few questions I'm going to leave you with. What is your definition of worth? What does that mean to you? What is that worth? What is your purpose? Why are you doing it? And last but not least, what is your definition of success? So, with all that being said, I want to start to wrap up today's little podcasting recording episode with thanking Findaway Voices. I really appreciate the sponsorship. Please, folks, get yourself an account set up over at findawayvoices.com/Dale. I'm going to tell you that about the week before last, I actually set up my own account. The user interface is super simple. It's really easy to kind of walk through the whole system. In fact, actually, my book is already out on the marketplace, going out to the various 32 different distribution platforms. So I am really pumped. I'm really excited. And I just want to say big thank you to the folks over at Findaway Voices. Oddly enough, I get to go over and visit them this coming week in their headquarters. So if you don't already subscribe to me on YouTube, make sure you go over to YouTube, hit that subscribe, turn the bell notification on, because I'm going to actually show you some behind the scenes things happening over the Findaway Voices headquarters. I can't wait for this. In the meantime, folks, I definitely appreciate you tuning in to the podcast. Until later, I will talk. You have to be watching this on the replay. Join me on over into this very next video. I'm going to share just a little bit about that last podcast I was telling you about, where I made like a lot of egregious mistakes that literally just almost sunk me in this business. And I probably would have quit if it weren't for a few little things. So I'll see